There we go. Cool. We all set?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, I'm not in my usual spot because we're refinishing my basement. I'm in my basement right now, and we like
Okay.
refinished this first room, but the second room needed we needed to wipe out the staircase. It was like this old, it's 100-year-old house, and had
Yeah.
to put like in the handrail and do all this code stuff. So it's like I've got all my shit from that room in here. You
Yeah.
can't see it right now. And so it's kind of a mess. So I usually have this bookshelf back here, but there's like some boxes and things like that. So just it looks like we're hoarders, which we're not, but it's kind of a
Yeah.
mess. So sorry about that. Hopefully this looks okay.
No, it's fine, buddy.
Okay, cool.
Speaking of the horde of boxes, what we're dealing with is like Amazon Prime. Every couple of days we're getting
Yeah.
boxes delivered to the house, and then we can't get rid of the excess. In addition to being a singer musician, Dad was a master carpenter, kind of a Renaissance man who could do some construction. I mean, are you capable of doing that, Derek? Is that something you can do?
Zero. Zero. No. It's funny because my grandpa on my dad's side, so my dad's dad r ran a hardware store. That's what he did.
Okay.
And my dad fixed up GTOs, and he knows everything there is to know about cars and building stuff. My dad's an accountant actually, or was. He's retired now. But he's super handy. And nope, nothing. I don't know how to I don't know how to hang blinds. Like my wife is more handy than I am, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who does more cooking in the house? You or your wife?
Probably me, honestly. We both
Okay.
kind of like to cook. I do like to do that. So there's a lot of dad stuff I like to do. I'm completely incapable of like building and or fixing anything. So yeah.
That's fair. I also wanted to ask you, since I mean this would be my late night snack time, about 9:30. Is hoagies and hops? I mean, are you having a full sandwich at this stage of the day?
I try not to eat after 8,
Okay.
which is hard for me. Um, but yeah, I mean hoagies and hops for sure. 42nd and Boulevard. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always in the rotation. I love Christina. I celebrate their entire catalog at Hoagies and Hops.
This is picking your favorite child, but do you have a favorite sandwich from them?
Yeah, the favorite sandwich is the Hog Island. It's their Italian. And it's not something that you can get out here. No offense to the chains. And look, I have gone to chain restaurant. I'm not one of those people. Oh, I only do local. I try to eat local as much as possible. I've done the chains. Um, the one thing missing from being an East Coaster, I mean, Christina's a Philly, so like, I didn't spend a ton of time in Philly. That was like 2.5 hours from where I was. But one
Mhm.
thing we had where we were delis, and they didn't even have menus. Like you just go in, you tell them what they want. Like you just they have all the meat like hanging back there and like the cheeses and stuff, and you're just like, all right, the I want prosciutto and I want salami and I want the provolone and I want it on a bialy. You know what I mean? Or whatever you want it on, or a grinder roll or whatever. And they just slice it right in front of you and make it. And you don't really have that out here where it's all like kind of like prepackaged and all of that. So I think it's the bread. She ships in the bread from South Jersey, and I think that's really what kind of makes the difference on the sandwich.
Well, and to make the bread go down, what's the preferred beer? Chili Water Brewing.
I like the dark beers, because
Okay.
I'm not like a drinker anymore. So I don't have to worry about like, oh, well, I gotta have 4 of these. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have a dark beer, a Dunkel lager called kind of like a German beer, like a not really Guinnessy, but not like a stout kind of thing. Somewhat similar. I'm not much of a beer snob, so maybe I'm the bad person to explain it. It's called Dark Side of the Munich, and
Okay.
I really like that one, and they've got kind of like a Pink Floyd-y sort of can. Really cool.
Well, and one that
Chili
I
Water
can.
Brewing, by the way, is the one that has the beer right next door. Yep.
There you go. I one of the episodes I watched, was there a cannabis infused beer too, or no?
Yeah, so not a beer, but like a seltzery type thing. Like
Okay.
I think they have one that's like a margarita, and then they have one that's really good. That's like a kind of like a Hawaiian punch level one. And
Okay.
that's nice just to like mellow you. I mean, people people hear THC and whoa, it's not like
Yeah.
that. But it's nice to just kind of, level you out a little bit at the end of a hard day.
You mentioned your dad was an accountant, and I wore this for you because I thought I recalled, didn't he work for Viacom, who
He
owned
did.
MTV? Yeah.
Yeah. My
Um,
dad, the
yeah.
cool thing is that my dad had the lamest job ever, right? He's a CPA. He was the director of taxes at Viacom.
Wow.
But he
Yeah.
worked for Nestle. He worked for Viacom. He had a lot of cool companies that he represented. Like he'd come home with like 50, 100 grand bars and like Nestle Crunches, and then they'd have take your kids into work day. And this was the 90s, so this was um the last kind of relevant era of MTV when it was still the center of pop culture. And
Mhm.
we'd go to take your kids to work day. It was in the MTV building right in Midtown Manhattan in Times Square. And it was like I can't even explain to you how cool it was as a 13-year-old to like, hey, let's go to the fourth floor and there's Nickelodeon, and let's go to the third floor and here's Mike Judge's office and all the Beavis and Butthead stuff, and oh my God, like there's Comedy Central, and then you know what I mean, and then you've got eventually Carson Daly and Total Request Live, and all of it. I mean, it was really cool. My dad absolutely hates New York City because he had to commute in from where I
Oh,
grew up in
yeah.
Connecticut. But my sisters and I, because of those experiences as kids, we love the city. Like I mean, you see some of the Knicks stuff in the background. I grew up a pretty big New York sports fan, but I still to this day I love New York, and it's hilarious. My dad had to ride on the train back and forth, so he freaking hates it.
Well, and Indianapolis being the racing capital of the world, I don't think we're going to adapt to public transportation anytime soon. But for me, so as somebody that doesn't like to drive, I like the idea of like New York City and the public transportation option. That's kind of cool, you know.
Yeah, it's the people that knock it are the ones that I think have never tried it. Um, I think there's like this. I don't know why we've done this in this country, but there's like this almost a not scarlet letter, but it's almost like, ew, ride the bus. What? And it's like,
Yeah, right.
who cares? It's the bus is actually great. It gets you from point A to point B. You can check your phone. I hate traffic. I hate finding a place to park my car. And you go to New York or DC or some of these places where you can't imagine life without mass transit. I
Yeah,
guess we're fortunate here in Indy that it can be you can get from point A to point B with limited hassle in a car, but with the way that it's grown, I mean, if it grows on the same I've been here since I moved to Indy in '06. If it grows anything close to the same trajectory from '06 to now over the next 18 years, then we will be wishing that we had a mass transit infrastructure in here because I mean, 20 years ago, hell, 10 years ago, Sheridan was a freaking cornfield. And those communities now are even exploding. You go out west, like on 70, you go out there like Monrovia and like places like that. I mean, all these like little former
yeah,
one stoplight towns are exploding.
yeah.
West, east, north, south. You have Center Grove. I mean, Center
Mhm.
Grove 30 years ago was a cornfield. So, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get on my soapbox there about
It's
mass
all good.
transit.
Worth documenting here. President Joe Biden is delivering the State of the Union right now. So, just with where the country is, certainly kind of a historic time. Wanted to mention that. Um, you went to the NBA All Star game, which was recently in Indianapolis. Tell me about your experience. How was it?
Disappointing.
Why?
It was disappointing. I have to be honest. I grew up a gigantic NBA dork.
Mhm.
The Knicks were my first love as a kid, and I've always, I love sports. I love football. I love baseball. I've come to love racing from being out here, but pro basketball has always been my number one. It's the sport where I'm the most wowed on a consistent basis. I think even middle tier NBA guys can do just ridiculous things. Um, that said, you guys you watched the game, right? I'm assuming. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a farce of a basketball game. The atmosphere was like a preseason Pacers game. It was not good. It was just not. ticket prices were crazy, and I feel bad for the people, the fans that actually got access to tickets and were able to afford to go. I feel bad because it wasn't anything close to even like a Friday night Pacers Cavs game. So it was disappointing. I mean, look, I'm lucky to get the chance to be there and to cover it and to, be in the bowels of the stadium and walk by Jason Tatum and Giannis, and it's cool. Stuff like that never stops being cool. So that part of it was neat, of course, but yeah, the actual game and the atmosphere itself. All-Star Weekend was great. Indy, I think, did a great job, all things considered, especially with the snow. But the worst part of All-Star Weekend was the game, and that's supposed to be the main event. So, yeah, that's always a problem.
And the snow didn't help things either. I mean,
No,
fortunately for the Super Bowl, we still joke about like how the weather was perfect for the week that the Super Bowl was here, and it
yeah.
helped the whole turnout happen. If you wouldn't mind, would you please tell the story of when Jake was kind of your escort at the Super Bowl, and you got to kind of see everything by just pretending like you had been there the whole time, essentially.
Yeah, so Jake and I started the Query and Schultz radio show, or we were hired to do it in August of 11. And so the Super Bowl was obviously February of 12 that year. So I remember like, week 3, week 4 of the job, Buzz Casey, it's not his real name. Jason was his real name. The guy that helped hire us, he was the PD of the cluster. So X103, NDE, all those. And he was like, hey, new guy, I want you to get credentials for everybody for the Super Bowl. And so, I'm filling out these credential applications, and he's like, I want you to do the Bob and Tom crew too.
Oh yeah,
And
that's right.
so I'm like, I'm nervous. Just even speaking to like Bob Cavoyan or Chick McGee, what I mean? Like was unheard of. Like there's no way that I'm the janitor in that building. Um, and the awkward thing with Chick, I'll get to the security part at the actual Super Bowl, but I love attaching this story too.
Yeah.
Obviously Chick's name, Chick McGee, is not Chick McGee. That's not his birth name, right? For Super Bowl credentials, it's like a passport. Like you need your social security, you need your real name, you need your ID and all this stuff. And so I remember actually like emailing Chick and being like, hey, oh, hi Chick, my name's Derek. I'm the co-host on the NDE show. I need your, give me all of your personal information. And he was like, who the hell's this guy? Like, I'm not giving him all this stuff. And it took a second. And Chick and I became friends and all of that. He's a wonderful guy. But
Yeah.
um, the whole Super Bowl thing, it was obviously this big undertaking. So we end up obviously applying for credentials, and we get them for the cluster, and Jake and I get them too. And the Lucas Oil Stadium press box can't possibly fit all of the media that are attending there, right? So we were in the overflow. So they put us in the stadium. So we were in, I don't remember what section it was, 630, let's say. We were in the second to last row of the entire stadium. One row in front of Dave Calabro. I just want to point that out, of WTHR. We love Dave, but we got a kick out of that we were one row in front of him. And so the game ends, and we have access to the locker rooms and the press room and things like that, but we don't have field access. They limited that to camera crews, and then like the national, obviously, like I think it was an NBC broadcast, if I remember right. So the NBC people had field passes, and then like VIP had field, like, I'm assuming like Eli Manning's wife had field pass, probably.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and it's pretty clear on your credential if you have field passes or not. They color code a lot of that stuff. So we're going downstairs, and I'm assuming we're just going to go to the press conferences and go see Coughlin or whoever, Belichick. And Jake's like, well, the tunnel's right here. Like, let's just go through. And I was
Sure.
like, are you crazy? Like, they're like, canine dogs and people with like,
Yeah.
shotgun strapped, like military police level security, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And of course, because it's Jake, he's like, just follow me, just kind of act like you know what you're doing, and we're just kind of walking through. And Jimmy, there are people everywhere, right? So it's not like we're the only ones that are going through the hallway. There are people absolutely everywhere. And it's a little bit of a kind of a chaotic scene. And we just kind of calmly glided through. And then we kind of walked on the field and went off to the side in one of the end zones and just kind of stopped and just kind of surveyed the land. And, let's make sure that nobody's going to say, hey, something like that. So we stopped real quick. I think we snapped a picture, and then Jake just always wants to push the envelope more. He's like, let's go over to the benches. So we go over to the benches on the sidelines, and there's still like players and their families like kissing and crying and hugging. And here are two guys with two radio guys with credentials just walking on through. And I
Yeah.
got a picture with a handful of confetti because I grew up a huge Giants fan, so it was really cool to have them win here. Um, and then we go eventually go to the locker room, and there's a logjam of people as we get to the locker room. And so Jake and I stop in the hallway, and I look directly to the right of me, and I kid you not, Jimmy, like I could reach out and touch him. It was Archie and Olivia Manning and Eli's wife and their kids, and they're standing there waiting to get into the Giants locker room. So some fans are like behind this rope over here, and Jake and I are like two of, I don't know, five or six people that are there with the entire, royal family of the NFL,
Yeah.
waiting for them to get in. So that whole week, I mean, you were here. It was surreal. It was like a dream. Thinking about it now, it's so ridiculous to think that Indy not only hosted it but did such a great job, because all of it was so crazy.
Yeah, I remember Dad participated, did something musically, and "Here Come the Mummies" was here, and um, also the University of Indianapolis benefited because the Giants used their campus to practice, so
Yeah,
we got renovated by the NFL, which
I
is really
remember
cool.
that.
So yeah, I got to see that as a college student, and I don't know how musically inclined you are, Derek, but Madonna was the performer
Mhm.
for Indianapolis. Any opinion of her and her performance?
I thought it was great. Not like Prince in Miami,
Yeah.
Purple Rain in the Rain level. But yeah, it was great. It was cool to say, even being in the same building as Madonna is pretty cool. But yeah, I thought, and maybe you don't ask me because I'm a Giants fan, and if the Patriots win, maybe it's a little bit different. But the fact that it was Brady and the fact that it was Peyton's brother, I think added to the fact that it was a game that people here cared about the result. It wasn't like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a recent Super Bowl. Bengals and Rams. Who cares, right? Who cares? It was a game that people really cared about. So I think just on every level, the concert, the game, the matchup, the week, Fallon doing his show at
That was cool. Yeah.
Burt Circle Center, it
Mhm.
was crazy. It was all of it was just nuts.
Did you do the zip line? You'd be perfect for that.
Didn't do the zip line. We tried. Ash and I, my wife and I were actually, she was still my girlfriend then, I think. I should probably know when I proposed. I think I proposed in 12. So that was early 12. So we were a couple of months away from getting engaged, but we went down like the first set. Remember, the entire state of Indiana was there like the first Saturday that it was open, because that was before all the travelers came in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but we tried, and obviously it was like a 3 hour wait. And I think we got about 90 minutes into it, and our line wasn't moving. There was some people were jumping in front of us, and there was some disorganization with the line. And no, long story short, I did not ride the zip line. Did you get up there?
No, I wouldn't trust the integrity of that thing with me in it. I just
Yeah.
no, not safe enough for me. Um,
People
I
that don't, one thing I want to add, and
go
I
ahead.
don't know if everybody knows this. I think people in Indy know this, but in case you have people that aren't listening that are in Indy, the idea of the Super Bowl Village, which is now standard for all cities, started here. That was the planning committee's idea, was to do something outdoors, and everybody was like, "Are you freaking crazy? It's Indiana in February." And of course, the weather, given what it was, I mean, the Super Bowl Village was a massive, massive hit, and now
Yeah.
it's required in any Super Bowl host bid that you'll have some sort of an outdoor Super Bowl Village type space.
I'd like to go back to your dad's job with Viacom and all that stuff real quick. Was he ever starstruck or got to meet a celebrity where he was like, I got to meet this person today?
If he did, I don't remember.
Okay.
My dad is the least braggadocious. Um, I can't remember one time that my dad ever bought anything for himself.
Oh,
I can't remember one
that's
time.
sweet. Wow.
Yeah, he drove, he loved cars and still loves cars. He's 72 years, 70, yeah, 72 years old now. Um, but he drove a minivan with a license plate. I'm a triplet that said three babes on it for like 20 years. He did that for the family. He hated commuting. He rode the train. He did it for his family. He's the most selfless person I've ever met in my life. So he's not the person that would be like, oh my God, I met somebody. But I do know that um they would rub elbows occasionally with some of the executives that came in and things like that. I don't know if like Madonna was up in the offices where he was on the, whatever, the 28th floor. I'm trying to remember where exactly he was. But cool experiences wise, we got to do a lot of cool stuff. And my dad worked for the company that got bought by Viacom was called Gulf and Western, and they owned MSG Network and the Knicks and Rangers. So we got Knicks and Rangers tickets all the time, and concerts to the Garden. So I saw Billy Joel 1999 going into 2000 New Year's Eve at the Garden. Um, Elton John, stuff like that. Those were the cool things that we got to do via my dad's job.
Well, and I have an appreciation for my parents because my first live concert was James Taylor.
Nice.
What live concerts stand out? You mentioned Billy Joel and a few others, but
Yeah, and I'm not a concert guy. I mean, yeah, the coolest one that I ever went to was Billy Joel Y2K for sure.
yeah.
The only issue with that was I was 16 and I'm with my parents. And when I was 16 on New Year's Eve, I wanted to go, drink Coors Light cans on a golf course with my friends and
Sure.
throw up in the woods. You know what I mean? Like that's what I wanted to do on New Year's Eve. So I remember being kind of pouty that night. Um, I saw Elton John and Billy Joel together at Giant Stadium, which was really neat. I like Fish, so I've seen Fish before. My favorite concert I ever went to was the first one I went without my parents, and I was 17, and I saw a jam band in Southern Connecticut called Deep Banana Blackout, and they're great. They've been around for like 25 years. They're from the area where I grew up. And that's just kind of a personal. That's the deepest of deep cuts, but that's a personal favorite for me.
Um, One of the proudest moments of my life was telling Dad when I got hired at 1430. Have your parents gotten to see some of your success, and do you recall any reaction to when they heard you?
Yeah, which is great, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's great to get to experience that. I still think at the end of the day, the number one thing that anybody can strive for is, did you make your parents proud?
yeah,
And I feel like I did that, but with the caveat being, even like little things that I do are just the greatest. Like same for my sisters. You know what I mean? My parents, I had a very, and I know you had a great support system too, Jimmy. And it's a great asset to have. You don't realize until you're much older how lucky
uh,
you are to be surrounded by not only love but encouragement and support. I had a very Norman Rockwell painting type childhood. It was perfect. We did everything together.
yeah.
Everyone loved each other. We vacations and games and sports and concerts and whatever else. We had a very, very happy life. My sisters and I, my mom and dad are to thank for that. But I think when I think about like the coolest moments that my I think the one for my dad is different from the one from my mom. Um, I was supposed to do a two-seater for the Indy road course. This was like 10 years ago, 2012, I think. When they were, I don't remember what they were, maybe the sports cars were on the road course. For whatever reason, I was at the speedway for like 4 hours and they never got me in the two-seater. They like forgot about me. Of course, Jake got in it because he's Jake, right? Nobody forgets about Jake.
Yeah.
And Doug Bowles felt so bad about it. He's the president of the Speedway. Right? So I'm gonna make it up to you. I'm gonna make it up to you. I'm like, Doug, don't worry about it. It was a free two-seater ride. Like, whatever. Like I didn't pay any money for it. And he calls me in July, and it's like it had to be like 8 in the morning. And I get a call from Doug, and he's like, hey, can you be here in an hour? And I was like, where? He's like, well, the track. Can you be at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in an hour? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I can be there. You're going to put me in a two-seater at 9 a.m.? I got to make sure I don't eat breakfast so I throw up all over myself, right?
Right.
Like we have Jimmy Johnson here and he's driving around the pace car and we're going to put you in there with him. So a couple of other media people got to do this. Ashley Adamson, who was on Channel 8, I know got to do it, and who's now with the Pac-12 network. And I don't remember who, maybe Hagan. I don't remember who else was there, but I got to go with Jimmy Johnson in the Chevy Camaro. So I called Jake immediately and I was like, hey, we have to tape an interview. You interview me, get into the studio right now, interview me while I'm in the car with Jimmy. And so we taped an interview for that day show, with me in the car with Jimmy. And we're going down the short shoot between turn 2 and turn 3, and he stops the car. We're doing like 150 miles an hour, and he stops the car like abruptly. I'm like, is something wrong with the Camaro? And he's like, this is on the radio, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he slams the gas down and starts spinning around. He was doing victory donuts and pulling up the brake on the Camaro while we're taping the interview. I didn't know this was about to happen. So we still have the audio of it, and I'm like screaming and and doing all of that. Doug told me later that I didn't sign the injury waiver, and he was freaking out because he thought that Jimmy and I got in like a fiery wreck on the back of the racetrack, and he was going to be in hot water. But anyway, I called my dad after that, and I played him the audio, and I showed him a picture of me and Jimmy in the Camaro, and he was always a car guy and a racing guy, so I think that was coolest. Um, for my mom, it was when I got to meet Patrick Ewing and interview him at the 2018 Final Four in San Antonio, and that for me, that's number one. That's more than the Super Bowl. That's in the non birth of my son, wedding day, special family memories category. That's number one for me, because he was my Mickey Mantle. I mean, to say, I mean, I think you can see maybe over here. I have every starting lineup figurine of Patrick Ewing, or even off-brand figurine of Patrick Ewing, I believe ever made. And they're all, my wife calls them my dolls, and they're all right here.
They're
So,
action figures.
so that's cool. I mean, my mom remembers when I was 7 years old in my basement and doing Patrick Ewing, which is the old PA, the Madison Square Garden PA announcer guy used to say his name like that, and to have it kind of come full circle and get to meet him. That was a big deal to me, to my family, to everybody.
Yeah. You said you wanted to be Marv Albert as a kid. Did you ever have a chance to meet Marv?
No,
Yeah.
bummer.
Yeah.
My roommate, when I first moved to Indy, my roommate was a guy named Chris May, who was a radio guy, and then he ran the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame for like 10 years. And he's in Rushville now. And he recently he left the Hall of Fame, I think, in 22, not that long ago. But I don't remember the exact circumstances. He was like a fill-in host, pre and post game host for the Pacers radio network.
Hmm.
And I think he was filling in the night that the Pacers were playing the Nets, and Marv was doing the game on Yes. And somebody at Yes called the Pacers and said, "Hey, we need somebody to give Marv Albert a ride to the game. Can they pick him up at the airport?" I'm paraphrasing a bit because I don't know, I wasn't there, so I don't know the exact circumstances around the story. But come around to the fact my roommate got to be in a car with Marv Albert and drive him from the airport to then Bankers Life Fieldhouse, or maybe it was Conseco even back then. And I was always insanely jealous because I was like, oh my God, just give me 5 minutes. And
Man,
yeah, personal hero of mine. The reason I wanted to get into broadcasting was Marv Albert.
if you could ask him a question, what would you ask him?
um, what I was always impressed with Marv Albert was just he was always able to kind of be even keeled, like not to the point where he didn't show emotion. The example that I always use for this, and I feel bad saying this because I actually really like Joe Buck now, and I think Joe Buck has
Hmm.
become a really great broadcaster. And you hear Joe Buck's voice, and you're like, wow, this is a big game because Joe Buck is there, right? But really, one of like the most disappointing calls ever, that I can remember, major sports calls, was Joe Buck in the first Giants Patriots Super Bowl on the David Tyree helmet catch.
Mm.
If you have a chance, look that call up, because David Tyree makes this incredible play where he basically pins the ball to his helmet, and this guy's a bit player, like a special team. I don't think he never had an NFL catch after that. And even at home, and I'm not just saying this as a Giants fan, everyone knew in Lifetime that was a catch. Like there's no way that that hit the ground, and people knew. And it's incredible. It's one of the 4 or 5 greatest plays in Super Bowl history. And Joe Buck just kind of goes, and it's caught by Tyree. And it's like, it needed to be much more amped up like that. Like, not like over the top Gus Johnson, who I also like,
Yeah,
but it required more emotion than that. And Marv always kind of kept it right. He always hit the exact right note. So I guess I would ask him like how were you able to do that? How were you able to kind of curtail the emotions? Because
yeah.
Marv was also a Knicks broadcaster, and I think it would be hard to do like 80 Knicks games every year and then also call the Knicks games, playoff games on NBC. The
Mm.
Knicks and Bulls and Pacers, they had some unbelievable rivalry games in that era. And
Yeah.
and I never felt like, I don't know if Pacers fans felt that way. I never felt like he was a homer for the Knicks at all. Um, so I don't know. I guess the question would be, why are you so perfect and why are you so good?
Yeah.
Um, just kind of handling that emotion. I think is a trait that any broadcaster would want to strive for, where you're not a robot. You're still alive. Your blood runs through your veins. You're reacting in the moment, but you always just kind of hit the right note. If it required a 7, you put in a 7. If it required a 12, it put in a 12. And he was always able to do that.
What's your son's name again?
James.
James. He looks just like you. It makes me laugh.
Huh.
How much of your son and how he's growing up reminds you of yourself?
Yeah, it's funny. I would have said, if you asked me this question like 2 years ago, there wasn't as much. He just started to show an interest in sports really recently, like the last year and a half, 2 years, and he's become a big NBA fan. Like, Dad, we pick the games every night, and then we wake up in the morning. Hey, what happened with the games? Who won? And then we tabulate the scores. He draws all the logos and stuff like that. So that's neat. It was important to me, and it remains important to me and my wife for him to kind of choose his own path. Like, I don't want to be like, Dad likes this, so you like it too. Like, I think by osmosis some of that happens, right? Just naturally from living under the same roof. But I don't want to force that stuff upon him, and um, it's needed. It's really kind of it's hard to explain. I think I had like an Instagram post the other day when he was drawing logos on a dry erase board, and I was like, I said something like, it's very strange to like clone yourself and then see your clone do the stuff that you used to do, because that's kind of what it's starting to feel like. But for somebody that was very on the fence about having kids just in general, the joke my wife and I always make is we wanted 0 to 1 kids, and we ended up on the high end of that, obviously. Um, it couldn't have turned out better. Yeah, he's a great little boy. He's a happy kid, and like I said, just kind of bringing our conversation full circle. It's easy to be a good parent when that's all you've experienced in your life, when you were raised by great parents. So I have challenges just like everybody else, but I have the ultimate example that I can kind of fall back on. And my wife too. I hit the in-law lottery. Like, I love her mom and dad like my parents. They're wonderful, wonderful people. And we're just real lucky to be surrounded by that support and love, and also try to give out our own from receiving so much in our lives.
What are the life lessons you've been able to learn from being in media and having this career?
The biggest one is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Kind of learned
True.
that the hard way. Yeah, don't. I think don't make it everything. I think a lot of people, it's funny. Media is different because, like, if you're a biomedical engineer, or I'm trying to think of other, like, I got a buddy that makes buku bucks, and he's a welder on the Metro North Railroad back east,
Hmm.
and he likes working with his hands, and he's union protected and all that. He likes welding. A lot of people, when they're kind of searching out a career, they say, I want to do this. With media, I think kind of I guess the double-edged sword of it, the good thing and well, the good and the bad of it, the two sides of it, is that I think you get into it and some people are like, well, I want to be that. And if you lean too much into the I want to be that, and that becomes your identity, then that's bad.
Mm.
You know, I wanted to be a sports announcer, And then I started getting to do it. And when I did it for so long, I was kind of like, okay, I am this, Derek Schultz, middle tier market AM radio co-host. I mean, it sounds ridiculous when you actually, say out the title like I was some big deal, like I'm like some D-list guy in, market 30 or whatever. But that's that kind of bled into it where when Jake and I, when the show ended, the radio show portion of it ended, and I got let go, I kind of went through this, and it was brief, but I kind of went through this identity crisis. Like, well, if I don't have this job anymore, then who am I? Like,
Uh-huh.
what am I? And that was a struggle. So that was one thing that I think that I learned. Make it a priority. I mean, you have to. You can't get anywhere if you're not going to make it one of the priorities. Just don't make it your whole life. Don't make it your whole identity either. There's some people that just um I think they want to do it so they can post on Instagram that they're doing it, which is fine. But
Right.
I do think that there's that kind of element of it. For me, it was never like, oh, I want to get recognized. Not that this happens frequently, but it was never like, oh, I want to get recognized at Kroger. For me, it was I like sports, so what can I do something that every day my sports can my day can revolve around sports. That's the way that I thought about it, and I think some people get into it thinking, because you can get really really famous doing this. You can get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of followers, and you get a lot of attention and love, and some of it's good and some of that can be really really bad. So not making it the end all be all, I think is the number one thing. And I think I've told you this before, Jimmy, in some of our conversations, just finding something else maybe that is more stable, um that you
Yeah.
can do, and then also have media and be able to kind of scratch that itch or fulfill that passion,
Right.
either on a freelance basis or in a free time basis, or something like that, just because it's such a volatile,
It
with
really is. It's
not a lot of
horrible.
security. Yeah, moving around a lot, and it's difficult.
Um, Better indie sports movie, Hoosiers or Rudy?
Um, you know what? Honestly, I've never even Notre Dame to me, and it's my parents were born and raised in South Bend, and I
Okay.
actually grew up it's weird to say this now, especially working for Purdue. I grew up like a huge Notre Dame football, IU basketball fan. I didn't realize until I came out here how much that pissed people off. Um, I never thought of Notre Dame as Indiana. Like Notre Dame is its own entity. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I know it's in Indiana, duh. But I've always kind of separated that from Indiana. I think Hoosiers is the more quintessential Indiana movie. Um, I love the soundtrack of Rudy. I think that kind of saves it a little bit because they're both pretty cheeseball, right? But the music in Rudy is all the music in Hoosiers is great too.
Okay.
I used to play that sometimes before exams to get fired up, which just sounds really stupid. But yeah, no, sorry, way too long of an answer. I'll lean Hoosiers on that one.
No, Notre Dame is definitely like the Vatican of college football. It's its own entity for sure. I
Yeah.
agree with that. We'll do the inside the actor studio questions. Favorite sound?
Ooh, favorite sound. My son's belly laugh. So not like a quick laugh or anything else. Like you say something that he thinks is genuinely funny, and it's the absolute best sound in the world.
Least favorite sound?
Public toilets flushing. I still don't like using public toilets. It's
Mm.
so loud. I hate loud.
Yeah. Well, and see, I don't know why this popped in my mind, but I'm going to document it here. Dad was the house band at Ike and Jonesy's, right?
Yeah.
And in order to make it a more efficient bathroom, they have the trough,
Oh
So like
God.
I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Public
No,
bathrooms
can't do it.
are a no go. Favorite curse word? You can say it
Really.
if you
Um,
want. You don't have to answer.
I'm not gonna say it. There is a word that I use only when I'm in the car, and I hate it, and I would never say it to somebody in real life ever. And I don't know why. It's the first, like, if somebody cuts me off in the car, it's the first thing that I say always. And my wife is like, "Why are you saying that?" Um, I'm not gonna say it, but it starts with a C, and
Okay.
ends
Yeah.
with a K, and it's two syllables. Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
So
We
like
can fill
South
in.
Carolina mascot, and then a lollipop, another term for that. I don't know why. Like it makes me uncomfortable even thinking about that word. Like, and it just there's something inside of me, like the angry East Coast driver, where it sometimes pops out when I'm alone in the car. Yeah.
I'm picturing that right now. It's very out of character for you.
No one's ever asked me that. Like, what's your favorite curse word? I mean, it's not my favorite, I guess, but it's the most random one that is somehow in my lexicon. I have no idea why.
um, is Jake a good travel partner
Yeah,
when
he's a
you're?
great travel partner because Jake Jake loves people and
Yeah.
stories and strangers. And so like I consider myself a people person, but I'm not gonna like walk up to somebody random on the street and somehow get their life story. And Jake always does that. I joke about this, but it's actually 100% true. Jake would make an excellent serial killer because people just naturally trust him. He just, he just kind of talks his way into being your best friend, and it's the weirdest thing. And you're like, wait a minute, like I didn't even like this guy at first. Are we best friends now? Like what?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a great travel partner. We did a lot of Final Fours together. So San Antonio, New Orleans, Atlanta. I'm trying to think of what else we did. We went down to spring training a couple of times with the Indians. And then we did other stuff like around the Midwest and things like that. And he was always, yeah, he was always a blast to travel with.
All right. For folks who want to catch your material, read what you have. Where can they find it?
Yeah, so I do bi-monthly columns. So every other week with Mark Monteith, we rotate on the Indianapolis Business Journal, IBJ, if you want to check that out. Fridays. So my one's actually we're taping this right now on Thursday night. My next one's tomorrow.
Okay.
Um, you
Cool.
know, Colts, Pacers. The only thing I can't write about is Purdue because there's
Conflict.
journalistic conflict of interest a little bit there.
Yeah.
So we both agreed that I wasn't going to write anything about Purdue. But yeah, outside of that, we try to cover all like Indiana and Indy sports. Jake and I do our podcast once a week, Tuesday nights at 7:30. QuarionSchultz.com. Really, Twitter is where everything is for me still. I hate being on there. I feel dirty being on it, but I'm on it. That's the audience that you cultivated over the years, right? At
Right.
least the non-bot accounts. So at Schultz975 on there. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much every once in a while I'll fill in. I filled in on Jake's show actually last week. So I'll do that on 1070 the fan 1075 the fan every once in a while.
How does that feel? It's hard to do 3 hours, man. Like when you're not doing it every day, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and this is gonna sound arrogant. I don't mean it that way. I could do it in my sleep. Um,
Yeah.
I did it for so long, and it's something that I think just it came naturally in a way, but then also after years of I mean, I was on the air for 12 years. So even before Jake, I did solo shows and two-man shows and things like that. And it's just you just turn the mic on and you just kind of have a conversation and go. So
Yeah,
it's like riding a bike. I
that's right.
prep and I do all that just like I always did because I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that. But yeah, I have no. It's not a heavy lift for me just because
Yeah.
I have no skills, Jimmy, and it's like the one thing that I can kind of do. So
It's
yeah,
a
that's
skill,
why it's
buddy. Don't worry
me.
about it. It's a skill. Um, Last question. I know you're a long ways off from this, and you don't have to worry about it. Enjoy the time that you have now, but are you gonna push James toward Purdue since you're an employee there now? You know?
Yeah, and I get a 40% discount.
Right. Yeah.
No, kind of like what I said earlier. I want him to choose his own path.
Okay. Good.
Um, my parents and we're I was fortunate to have the opportunity. I was in Connecticut and they paid out of state tuition. Mommy and daddy paid for my college. And we want to provide the same thing for him. Like I'm hoping he doesn't choose like Villanova or something, but
Okay.
or like an Ivy League school. Then we'd probably have to have some hard conversations. But yeah, he's free to choose where he wants to go. My household is funny because I've really leaned into this Purdue thing. Like I am genuinely like on board.
Yeah.
Um, and my wife is happy for me and happy with our life. She's not super happy about me wearing Purdue stuff around the house. She's still very much an IU girl. Um, so we'll see when it comes to James. James is definitely leaning more Purdue right now. He says boiler up, but that's mostly just to troll Ashley. So I guess we'll see. TBD is what I would say to that, but I'm not going to push him in that direction. No.
Okay. Well, Derek, I am really proud of you, man, for having altered your career to have something steady and to still be able to scratch the itch with Corey and Schultz every week, filling in at 1070 The Fan. It's a joy to document another episode with you, buddy. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Folks, to check out this episode and all others with the program, head over to JBK On Air at JBK On Air on all social media platforms. Also, linktree.com/JBK On Air for everything related to the show. A link is also in the description if you feel compelled to donate to the program. Until next time, have a great day and a better tomorrow.